A banner day for U.S.-Cuba relations. The United States flag is once again flying in Havana, but it's been a long 54 years, and there's still a way to go in smoothing diplomatic differences. Michael Voss has been witnessing this history in the making there in Havana. We understand that there is not just one, but two flag-raising events this day with different guest lists.
That's right, Mike. Well, as you can see, the American flag is fluttering in the wind behind me in front of the embassy. The first time it was raised here since the Eisenhower administration broke off diplomatic relations 54 years ago. History, if you like, has come full circle. Later in the day, there was a more private ceremony raising the flag outside of the ambassador's residence. Now, technically, there isn't an ambassador at the moment. The Senate won't confirm one, but so it's an acting chargé d'affaires. What was interesting about this one was that a certain number of dissidents, anti-Castro opponents of the government here, were invited to that reception, not to the embassy, just as there were no government officials, Cuban government officials, at the second one. But obviously the main event here, the reason John Kerry flew in, was to inaugurate the embassy. When John Kerry flew into Havana on Friday morning, he became the first Secretary of State to visit Cuba since 1945. Kerry was just 1 year old back then. Hundreds of Cubans gathered on the streets in front of the US Embassy to see the event unfold. Others leaned over balconies to catch a glimpse of history in the making. Cuba was represented by Josefina Vidal, the woman who led their negotiating team to reopen the embassies. On the US side, there were a number of lawmakers from both parties who long argued for engagement. The stars of the show, though, were three elderly Marines who 54 years ago had lowered the American flag here for the last time. Now they presented a new flag to another generation of Marines who raised the Stars and Stripes. A military band played the US national anthem. Very few of the Cubans watching this ceremony ever thought they would see an American flag flying in front of the building. The majority of the population were born after the revolution and considered this building the headquarters of the enemy. The Cuban government had long accused successive US administrations of trying to engineer regime change. Not anymore, was the message from John Kerry.
Cuba's future is for Cubans to shape. But the leaders in Havana and the Cuban people should also know that the United States will always remain a champion of democratic principles and reforms.
Afterwards, at a joint news conference, Cuba's foreign minister spoke of sorting out their differences through negotiations.
That despite the differences that exist between the governments of Cuba and the United States, which will not disappear, it's possible to build civilized and respectful and productive relations.
This historic day marks the end of one of the last remaining conflicts of the Cold War, but there are still plenty of differences left to resolve.
And Michael, they're talking about sorting out these differences, but how likely will it be that they can resolve them?
Well, I think the big one from the Cuban point of view is ending the trade embargo. And although John Kerry said that the administration, the Obama administration, wants to see Congress lift the embargo, no one is really expecting any movement on that terribly soon. The Republicans, I think, are going to make life slightly difficult there. That is one of them. Guantanamo, return of Guantanamo to Cuba is a long way off. I think some of the first negotiations will be over compensation. The United States wants compensation for US businesses that were nationalized by Fidel Castro shortly after the revolution in 1959. Cuba has come back and said they too want compensation. Fidel Castro, in a letter marking his 89th birthday on Thursday, said the United States owes Cuba loads of money, he said, millions of dollars, billions in fact, for what Cuba claims is the damage done to the country for the decades-long trade embargo. These may be some of the first negotiations to get underway.
All right, Michael Voss live for us in Havana.